What is Western pleasure? Hi, I'm Katie Van Slyke, and let's talk about it.
Just like that.
In this video, amongst others, we are going to deep dive into what are these classes that make up the quarter horse breed. On my channel, I find it so interesting to deep dive into the different things the American quarter horse can do. It is a very versatile breed, but quarter horses are not the only breed that show in the Western pleasure. It is also shown by paint horses, Appaloosas, and Arabians. For a little backstory on Western pleasure before we deep dive into what it is today, it was originated in the 1940s and 50s when cowboys would bring their best-minded, pleasurable to ride horses to the rodeos. And so it originated with the sense of we want it to be the most pleasurable ridden horses out there. We want them to have good temperaments. We want them to be smooth. So not only is Western pleasure rooted in the cowboy culture and influence, but it also has influence from the Spanish vaquero. So Spanish vaquero horses were deeply connected with their riders. There was so much groundwork that went into a highly trained stock horse. And so all of those foundational pieces turned into the most pleasurable ridden horses that you could find. So you wanted just good-minded horses that were easy, comfortable, smooth, and that has then turned into a competitive horse that is now shown in the Western pleasure at horse shows. Today, the modern Western pleasure horse is judged on the walk, the jog, the extended jog, the lope, and sometimes even the extended lope. Not only are they judged upon their ability to do those movements correctly, and we'll go into those specific movements here in a bit when we have an actual professional rider who is going to demonstrate these for us. But they're not only judged on their ability to do those things correctly, they are also judged upon their movement, their balance, and their willingness under a light hand to do those things. So now that we have a basic understanding of what Western pleasure is supposed to be, the purpose of it, and now we understand that it has a deep root in cowboy culture, Spanish vaquero culture, and there were so many building blocks that went into it. Now let's go to our professional demonstrator. We'll talk about the actual movements that we are looking for with a little bit of show footage mixed in. So for our demonstration today, we have Aaron Moses, who is a world and Congress champion trainer, rider, and he was the NSBA high point rider. Absolutely incredible trainer. I'm just saying, he's not going to brag on himself, so I have to. And then we are using my young stallion, Denver. Okay, so Denver, he did have a little bit of an abscess before Ocala, which is where all of these videos in this video are from, all of the show demonstration that we're using, and so he is just now getting back into work. So he's not necessarily top tier at the moment for himself, but I thought it'd be cool to use my own horse as the demonstration. So let's just see what he's got.
Perfect. Okay, so starting with the walk here, I like a horse to just be relaxed, free-flowing. We think of the name of the class, Western pleasure. It should just be like we're just going on a pleasurable ride here. Just a comfortable step here, not real fast, not real slow. Sometimes I think we try to make him walk too slow. I'll do a little demonstration of that. I think when a horse starts hesitating like this, and it's like it's just taking one step at a time, that's not my preference. I prefer, we don't have to look like we're race walking, but just kind of walking along here, comfortable. He's picking his pace, easy for him. Reasonably level top line, meaning that his neck and his body are fairly level. Some horses are going to be a little bit more comfortable a little above that. Some horses are going to be comfortable a little bit below that. So as long as it's reasonably level, I think that's what we're going for. Denver is actually one that he likes to keep his head a little bit lower. Like, if anything, I have to keep picking it up a little bit, reminding him, don't drop your head too low. That's just him. That's how he's been really since we started him as a 2-year-old. So that's kind of what I'm looking for at the walk. Okay, so as we pick up the jog here, again, it should just be comfortable. That's that's kind of the main focus of the class, a comfortable, easy step, something that, you know, it's easy for somebody to sit on. However, there are some, you know, important details here. And to me, the most important one is that, that he's hitting his diagonals, as we say. So that means this right front and this left hind should step at the same time and land at the same time, and the left front and the right hind should land at the same time. That's probably the most important thing here at the jog. Again, reasonably level top line. Again, he wants to get a little bit low sometimes. That's his nature, that's his preference, it's where he's most comfortable. I don't really spend any time at all telling him to put his head down. If anything, I keep telling him to pick it up, stay up there level. Like that to me, when he gets up there level, that's a pretty dang good jog right there. Just like that. Hitting his diagonals, comfortable, easy to ride. I'm not having to work or struggle. I can take my feet off. He's doing his job. That to me that's what I look for at the jog. So I'm actually going to demonstrate kind of a transition from the regular jog or the slower jog to the extended jog, so that you can see the difference. So here we're still at our regular jog, and then now I'm going to take him up to about where I'd show him at the extended jog. So as you can see here, the stride gets longer, the pace is a little bit quicker. There's a little bit more tempo, more ambition here in the step. Everything still applies. We want the diagonals to be hitting at the same time, just like at the slow jog. We want the top line to be as level as possible. Something I'm realizing here as I'm riding around before we show Denver, we need to work on getting him a little bit more disciplined about staying up here closer to level. And again, that goes back to his nature. It's maybe a controversial but an important point to make. One of the complaints about Western Pleasure is their heads are too low, they're too down all the time. It's pretty natural for these horses to want to be down, as you can see by the fact that I'm having to remind him to pick his head up. If I left him alone, he'd go down pretty low on his own. So that's not something that we're forcing on these horses. That's something that's in their nature, part of their relaxation, the way they're bred, the way they're bred to do their job. So extended jogging around here, we want to see a bigger, longer step with a little bit more tempo and ambition. It doesn't have to be, a trot like a hunt seat horse, but just a little bit more pace here. And then, as I get ready, I'll come down to my to my regular jog. I'm just gonna let him relax. I just stop pushing there. See where he comes on his own. Oop, a little bit too much there. Comes down to that regular jog on his own. I don't really have to tell him to do anything. I'll kick him back up here, extended jog. Now I'm gonna come back to my regular jog. Just quit pushing. He'll do it on his own. Whoa. Okay, so as we move into this lope here, we're gonna mention again that Denver's just getting back to work, so he's not 100% yet. He's not where he's gonna be when we show him. His strength isn't fully there, his frame isn't there. You're not gonna see the absolute best representation of his movement today, but by the time we get him in the show pen, that'll all come together. So what we look for in the lope, it all goes back to just being comfortable to ride. I just want to be able to kind of sit here, cruise around. There's not a lot of up and down motion. I'm just going for a cruise here. Something anybody could sit on and ride if they were going to sit here. Lope is a 3-beat gait. So that means the footfall sequence is outside hind leg, inside hind leg, and outside front leg land at the same time. And then the inside front leg finishes the stride and is the 3rd beat. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's very important to have that cadence, that footfall rhythm. We want The rule book, AQHA rule book, says a reasonable length of stride in keeping with the horse's conformation. So that means that just wherever, kind of wherever God made that horse with this length of stride that he has, we don't want to take away from that or change that too much. We don't want to shorten it. We want that horse taking the step that he was born with. Just swinging along here, having rhythm, swinging his legs, not a lot of up and down in his head and neck, reasonably level top line again. All things that we're going to keep working to improve here before we hit the show pen, but that's kind of what we're looking for in the Lope.
So that's Western Pleasure. That's something for us to build off of. If you have more questions about the discipline itself, about the mechanics of it, if you want to deep dive into specific pieces of it, please let us know. We would love to use my own horses, since this is what I breed for, to help explain and to further educate. So please let us know what you would like to hear about in the future in the comments, and then let us know what other class that the quarter horse exhibits that you would like for us to explain.